Hello, and thank you so much for joining my webinar on ethnomathematics. We have four people on the line, I think. They are Hayley and Tanya and Jason, and I think David might be there, but we can't hear him just now. So you guys are more than welcome to comment. Please comment so that I can see what you need to know, or, I'm quite happy if you want to argue a point with me or whatever you want to do. That is wonderful. All right, so ethnomathematics. The reason why I know about ethnomathematics is because in my very last assignment for this degree, I was asked to research it, basically. So I found out a few things about it, and I've found out what I like about it and what I don't like about it, and we'll see how we go with that. All right, mathematics all around us. Everywhere we look, we have mathematics. So it's in the technology of today, it's in the way we communicate, it is there. So it's very, very important that our children learn how to express their mathematics and use it in everyday life. That's what this is about. So there's many different ways that people say that children can learn how to do maths. One of them is ethnomathematics. Now, I had never heard of this before, never, and neither had the 15 teachers that I asked about it. Basically, it was derived in about the 60s, but the father of ethnomathematics' name is D'Ambrosio, and he discussed it as being where we look at the culture, certain cultures, and we work out what kind of mathematics they use within that culture. So it studies the connection between cultures and the way they use math in everyday life. Bishop discovered that every culture counts, every culture measures, locates, designs, explains how they do things, and plays. So in that way, we are very, very similar. But then D'Ambrosio discovered that, well, really, every culture discovers different problems, and then they have to work out the solutions based on that. So it's very culture-centric, I guess. Our problems are very different to other culture problems. Does anyone have any comments on that so far?
Not this stage.
Good. Stop me if you do, otherwise I'll get through this very quickly. All right, so ethnomathematics, how can it be used in the classroom? Well, the ethnomathematicians believe that using ethnomaths in the classroom can help people of specific cultures feel unique and affirm their identity. So by acknowledging who they are, where they come from, what their culture is like, how they do maths, then the idea is that those people will feel like, we're being heard, we're being included in this classroom. Our maths is important, we're important. Basically, we would be taking mathematics from another culture and bringing it into our classroom. So say there's an African child there, we would bring mathematics that is relevant to his culture and do it in the classroom. What I don't understand is how we would do that and make everyone else feel like they are part of that culture, and if that is even the idea behind it. So, if we have a culture or many different cultures in our classroom, how do we bring ethnomathematics in and make it relevant to everybody? I'm unsure. Students with an ethnomathematics approach can see how different cultures generate different math. So basically, as I said before, we do it one way. How does the next culture do it? It's quite interesting to see how they do it. And Rosa and Ori say that math finally becomes relevant if it is put into someone's cultural context. But I'm not so sure. So I agree with these people who criticise ethnomathematics, and correct me if you think I'm wrong as well. Rosa and Ori say that when you implement maths from a different culture, into a different context, it loses its meaning. So where it was maths elsewhere, all of a sudden it doesn't mean anything to us or to the person that you're trying to help. Domite and Pay say that including the human factor in mathematics sullies it and splinters it. Now, that's an interesting concept, that really mathematics is very pure and very plain, and it is what it is, 2 plus 2 equals 4. So when we bring in the human concept or the human factor, then, where does it leave maths? Interesting. Pay says, well, scholarly maths that we teach in school, the academic kind, and local knowledge should be kept quite separate. People that are from another culture come to school so that they can learn the scholarly maths.
No, I agree with that.
You agree with that?
I agree too.
Yeah.
Because we can't teach them.
We've got to learn our math. Otherwise, you can't, change the mathematics for the people already here, born here, for those visitors.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Great.
Born culture.
Yeah, I agree.
So Tanya, yeah.
Those people, well, we're in our society. If we want to be in our society,
yeah,
we need to teach them our maths as well as being respectful of where they've come from. You can't just change everything.
Because if they're trying to survive in our world, then how would they if they don't know our math, right?
Well, there's enough changes going on. Political correctness, we're changing everything. So we're losing our identity, and now it's spreading down into mathematics, which is ridiculous.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so Rollins and Carson make an interesting point that what we see as math may actually not even be math at all. So when we go into another culture and look at what they're doing that we think is maths, it could be completely not what they're thinking. I'll explain that a little bit further. So, so what we mean about that is, so Pay, again, mathematical knowledge is only relevant in the context in which it is used. Pay talks about and it's on my blog, it talks about a situation where some researchers went into an Indigenous community and they were very happy to see that they were building homes, building houses. And so they took that knowledge back into classrooms and said, well, this is how the Indigenous people build houses or build huts or shelter. But what they didn't realise was that a lot of, or what they did realise, is that a lot of the context was missing. So therefore the meaning was gone. All of a sudden the school children looked at it and went, oh yeah, it didn't mean anything to them, because in fact the Indigenous people were more interested in having a community event in building a home than they were in the actual mathematics of this goes here and that goes there and why have we got a house or a roof like this or whatever. It's quite interesting. Do we have someone just join us? No.
No, I'm still here, Jason.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I thought I heard someone come in. All right. So another point of view is that interpreting an act like basket weaving or building a home, we're putting our own mathematics spin on it. It's interesting, isn't it? So our math then starts to colonise their math. Everyone's becoming Eurocentric. Whether that's a bad thing or not, I'm not sure. But I guess if we were to say that we were going to take our form of math into another culture, then that might not be right either, because our math may not work in their culture. All right.
That's right.
Sorry, Jason?
That's right.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So another issue I have is that I believe that ethnomathematics or any form of singling out people is a form of exclusion. So singling out people can proliferate their otherness. I'm going to do this maths activity with you because you are African or Indonesian or Aboriginal. That makes you an other. you're not the same as us. So let's just do your thing and the rest of us will do something different. I don't agree with that. I just don't think that's good at all. Pay says that rudimentary knowledge can't stack up with real world knowledge. So basically, if you're in a classroom like that and you're giving certain people of the classroom cultural activities instead of the Eurocentric math that everyone else is doing, well, you're going to see this big divide. You're going to see these kids over here doing the culture one just staying where they are, and the kids that are learning the math that is going to be relevant to their future are going to be light years ahead. So, what is that? I don't get that.
Hey, Sam?
Yeah.
I'd also be very concerned about that, because if we did that, we are not of that culture. So that means we have to learn that culture. And if we did that, wouldn't we then change based on the theory that you presented? Wouldn't we then not necessarily get the math? Then we're not necessarily teaching it correctly because we're not of that culture.
And is there?
So it doesn't sort of.
Go on.
True. It doesn't sort of ring like it could work unless you're of that culture.
And is there even any math in what they're doing? Like I agree with you. How can we present it? We will be presenting it from a Eurocentric point of view, trying to act so we know what we're doing.
Exactly.
I get it, totally. And Tanya, you're a teacher, aren't you? What year do you teach?
Yeah. 4 5s at the minute, but I've taught all of them.
What's that?
I've taught all of the year levels in primary.
Yeah, okay. So you're experienced here. All right.
Yeah, a little bit.
So Rollins and Carson make an interesting point. We say, we'd better stick with certain cultural activities for people in different cultures because they won't understand the math that we're doing. Well, basically they say that mathematics, when you're a kid, mathematics is foreign to all of us. So it's a foreign language to you, me, everyone, so everyone has an equal opportunity to be good at math because it's universal. It's universal. 2 + 2 is 4 in anyone's language, right? And Pei also says that token cultural classroom activities are unhelpful. In fact, he says that, it's kind of like if you go to a foreign country and you think that going and looking at a folk dance is enough to tell you all about that country. That's what doing a mathematics activity in a cultural context is like in a classroom. I kind of get that. Just because we're doing a culturally relevant classroom activity doesn't mean we know about that math. All right. I think it's also very political. I think that ethnomathematics promotes social justice at the expense of modern ideology. So basically, and Omar and Pei agree with me, are we being too politically correct? Are we saying, listen, we've got to do this because, it's the right thing to do? But is it? Is it really the right thing to do? Rollins and Carson say, hey, civil rights widens the gap. So while you're being really, really nice to these people, you're actually not doing the right thing by them at all. So what do we hope for our children? The problem is, in my mind and in the research that I've found, we look at people's backgrounds too much. We go, because of your background, you are here. And because of your background, you are here. Because of your background, you're only going to be here in the future. Because of your background, you'll actually be up there, right? So we're constantly affirming for kids that their background is basically where they're going to stay. So rather than checking just the background, we should be checking the foreground too. And by the foreground, we mean the opportunities that are present for every single child. Just because someone's from the wrong side of the tracks doesn't mean they won't be amazing in the future. Just because they are from a particular culture doesn't mean that they can't assimilate into ours or even be their own brand of culture within our culture. And Pei, I love Pei. Pei says, well, what happens when they want to be different? What happens when the black kid wants to be doing the white kid stuff? And in fact, Pei mentions it like that. what happens then? What happens when the poor kid wants to be a rich kid? You know, how can we support that? Why do we just say, well, you know what, because you're that, you are that. You're going to be that forever. So, mundane.
Exactly, Sam.
Yes, you agree? Thanks.
I agree. Why do we put people in boxes? Is it education about making people the best that they can be, no matter what their circumstances, no matter what cultural background they come from, no matter what anything? Aren't we there to make them the best that they can be in every area that we have them?
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And who's to say that they can't be the best that they can be? You know what I mean? Like, we cannot. There are so many kids out there that just need us to, you know, be their cheerleader. So, an Indigenous perspective. I found this great guy called Mundine online. It's not Anthony Mundine. It's actually, his name starts with an N and then it's Warren. I can't remember his first name. That's a bit naughty. Anyway, his perspective is, listen, you know, treat us the same. He's an Aboriginal man. He goes, well, treat us the same because you are going to make us more disadvantaged by not treating us the same. Our kids need to be treated the same way as your kids are treated. If not, in the future, poverty will be actually the result of education or lack of education. Isn't that an interesting point? I love that point. And it's not just, he says also, it's not just us, the Aboriginals and Indigenous people that you have to worry about. There's a whole heap of illiterate and innumerate people across Australia. Just look at the statistics. So why are we concentrating just on Aboriginal perspectives? He even actually goes so far as to say, you know, why are we concentrating on the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultural perspectives within the curriculum and the Asian perspectives? Why aren't we just concentrating on what kids need now and in the future? You know, what are we doing? I love his point of view. And, you know, it's wonderful to come actually from an Aboriginal man. He can see that perhaps we're holding back his culture because of the way that we are trying to be so politically correct. All right, function of school. Look, the number one function of school is to prepare kids for their future, don't you think? That's it. That's the aim. That's what we want to do. And unfortunately, or fortunately, the future involves technology and maths. So we got to get it right.
Sam,
Yeah.
aren't we also getting our kids to prepare for jobs that aren't even around yet? So what do we know what maths they're going to use?
Yeah, that is such a great point as well, Tanya. So, you know, we need to be keeping abreast of it, don't we? We need to be on top of it. We don't even know what maths they need to use. But what's the point of looking at past maths that's irrelevant, that's not going to be used? Yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So, look, I think that it is important to look at people's culture in every way when we teach them. Every child is different. There is not one child that's going to be the same as the next, even if they're from the same culture. So, cultural differences of all students should be considered when we're teaching them. So their values, their beliefs, their customs, attitudes, relationships that they have within their families and social groups, literature and their art. It should all be considered. I agree that it should. So that's why I thought, well, how can we do it within our schools? One way that I've discovered we could do it is through the 8 Aboriginal ways of learning. Now, this is a fabulous framework, in fact, created by Yunka Porter, who says that there are about 8 different ways that Aboriginals teach their children. So it's kind of pedagogy within the Aboriginal culture. This is how they transmit their knowledge. This is how they learn. So how about we do this in schools, and not only will we gain the attention and the respect, I guess, of the Aboriginal students, but this is a way of getting every single student engaged, and also, you know, by teaching them in a way that is relevant to Aboriginals. I think it's amazing. So basically, they have ways of doing, such as telling stories, doing learning maps, having non-verbal communication, using symbols and images, having links to the land, working in a non-linear fashion, deconstructing and reconstructing information, and having community links. Now, the way I think we can use this in a mathematical setting is by using this pedagogy as a learning tool, not using the content as the learning tool. So not using Aboriginal content, but using their Aboriginal way of learning, so pedagogy. So for instance, with storytelling, you know, and if you've got any ideas, let me know, because I'd love to use this in my own classroom one day. You know, you can sit around in a group and you can spin yarns. They love the word yarn. So you can spin yarns about how this mathematical concept will help you or has helped you. So I could start by saying, well, you know, I know my times tables off by heart because it really helps me when I go to, you know, work out how many lollies I'm going to give my children. So now you, Betty, what do you think? How do timetables help you? So she can then come up with a story herself, and then we move on to John, and then we move on to Ben. And it goes around the circle, and we're all sharing stories about how maths can help us. So it becomes relevant. And not only is it relevant to the class as a whole, it becomes relevant to each and every one of those students in themselves because they've spun their own story. Learning maps can be used. Learning maps are basically telling students, okay, we're starting here, we're going to do this, and then we're going to end here. So you could put up a poster saying, in this unit or this lesson, we're going to start here and we're going to do these things and it's going to be awesome. And then we're going to end up here and it's going to be incredible. And so they can keep track of where they're at and how much is left of the lesson or the unit. Non-verbal strategies could include things like using manipulatives in mathematics. It could be about grouping your students. So, you know, you're talking about 4 groups of 6. Well, how about getting them up and putting them actually into those groups of 6? You know, that's a way that they can include that non-verbal strategy. Symbols and images. Well, you know, maths is basically symbols and images. Another thing you could do in there is use metaphorical language to explain different concepts. So, you know, again, spin a story about it. Land links. What about going outside to learn? What about drawing mathematical equations in sand outside? What about collecting, you know, leaves and sticks in order to you know, come back and do some kind of mathematical equation? What about including outdoors? Non-linear. This is about showing kids that they don't have to do things one particular way. So, you know, explain how to do something 3 different ways and then let them choose which one suits them for their learning style. They'll come to the same conclusion in a different way. Deconstructing, reconstructing, that's just all about showing them the whole picture and then breaking it into chunks. So this is what's going to happen, where we're going to go with this. Let's break it down now, you know, into smaller, more manageable bites. And lastly, community links. This could be as simple as doing group work where kids learn from each other and have the opportunity to teach each other, learn new concepts. You know, whenever you're in a group, you do learn from other people's perspectives. It could also mean bringing in adults, so parents of the kids, whether they're the Aboriginal parents or not. And it shows kids that maths is relevant. You know, the adults understand this, they get it, and this is how they use it. Yeah? What do you think of the 8 ways?
It's good.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome. I do know a teacher who is an amazing storyteller, and her maths lessons are amazing to listen to because she can weave a story around any maths concept, and she has kids just eating out of her hand. So I wish I was a storyteller like that, but she's just an amazing maths teacher through storytelling.
That's amazing. So it works. Oh, that's so good. That's so good.
It's been working for Aboriginals for 40,000 years.
That's amazing.
Let's use that.
Exactly. And, this is how they passed down information was, storytelling. So, it's got to be relevant. All right. So there are some references, people that I just referenced. And that is basically it. Do you have any questions for me or
I think
comments?
you've covered it all.
Yeah, I can't find the front page of this, so there we go. Okay, so I covered it all for you, Jason.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. What about you, Tanya?
I think you've brought up some very interesting points. I think, it might be politically motivated. In the 60s, it was very interesting what happened culturally there.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it's relevant nowadays because of the multicultural society we live in. I think it would be sending us backwards if we tried to do that. I did a session, we do Japanese in our school, and I taught kids for a term, 2 terms of the year. We taught about the way Japanese kids learn their addition through using a soroban skill, counting frame. We made the counting frame. We used it in our maths for 2 terms. Kids did a wonderful job. Some kids kept using it, some got rid of it because it showed what they needed to show, and then they moved on. I think we'd be doing them a disservice if that's all we focused on.
I think it's nice that we can show them stuff, we can show them how other cultures do it. But I kind of think that in many ways, those kind of mathematical concepts or even other concepts from other cultures belongs in a history lesson, or as you said, in a Japanese lesson. You brought maths into Japanese, but you didn't really bring Japanese into maths.
No, but we brought a Japanese concept into our maths for a couple of terms.
Yeah.
And we watched some videos about how wonderful how amazing these people were at counting really quickly. Yeah. And this is from using this technique, and we amazed at them, and then we put it away, and then we moved on to the next topic. So, but it was a really interesting process to go through.
Oh, that's awesome. That's amazing. Well done. Thanks for sharing that. Hayley, are you still there?
Still here.
Oh, yeah. Do you have any comments? I wasn't sure if we lost you because I know you've got some storms up there at the moment.
Yeah, they're just rolling through again. No, I think it would be very easy to get it wrong in the classroom.
Yeah.
Using it, I think that like the mathematics could be lost, if there's too much focus on on culture. And I think that like you say, it'd be hard to get it taught correctly. If it's not your culture, then you could be totally out of context.
Absolutely. I wonder if we could bring in, so if we were teaching Aboriginal students, could we bring in an Aboriginal elder and they teach the concept? But then would it even still be relevant within our school context? And what about the other children in the class who aren't Aboriginal?
That's right.
Yeah, good point. Thank you. Anything else?
No, that was really good.
Oh, good. Thank you. Jason, did you have any other comments?
No, that's all good. You've covered everything. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for joining. Thank you, everyone, very much. It's this is my very last assignment, and I'm very happy to be finished. And I totally am very thankful. So thank you for joining, and I'll just turn off the recording.
Thank you.
Congratulations, well done.